story begins in the Magical Academy of Rigarden, and we meet Mr. Edward, who explains to the students the basics of using magic and the magical incantation. And when Mr. Edward finishes explaining, he calls on the hero Will, who seems to be very embarrassed and worried, and we will know why later. And he is with his cat, Kiki, who doesn't care at all. And he says to Edward, "Come here because I want you to do a magic test." And indeed, Will arrives next to him, and he is acting like a boiled chick. And then he finds magic tools in front of him, and he is supposed to use the fire incantation on them. And we know that Will can't use magic, and when he tries to use the fire incantation, he doesn't know. And we see all his friends getting mad at him and laughing. So Mr. Edward looks at him while he is annoyed with him, and he says, "How can a student who doesn't know magic join the biggest and most academic magic academy?" And suddenly a student named Cheyenne appears and uses a special fire incantation on him. And he uses it on the magic tools in front of Will. And because of the power of his magic incantation, the fire turns blue. And then Cheyenne tells Mr. Edward that he found Will suffering and can't use the magic incantation. That's why he asked him to help him. And then we see Edward also uses his magic and turns the fire into ice. And he tells the student that magic in this world is the most important thing, and that a failed student like Will can't use the magic incantation. He can't be with us here in the academy. And when the class is over, we see him standing outside very sad and annoyed by the bullying party. But Cheyenne comes to him again, him and two of his friends, and they keep bullying him because our hero Will doesn't face only the weak monsters. And suddenly a girl appears with him in the academy named Colette. She intervenes and defends Will and tells Cheyenne that Will is a very hardworking person, and he spends more effort than anyone else here in the academy. But Cheyenne tells her that Will's hard work won't help him in anything. And he gets closer to Will and tells him to listen to Mr. Edward. And it's better for you to leave the whole academy and go. And when Cheyenne leaves him and goes, we see here that Colette starts to raise her spirits and treats him nicely so that he doesn't get upset. And she tells him that Mr. Edward doesn't love you and always bullies you, but Will almost doesn't care about her at all. And he tells her that he's happy that a beautiful girl like you is defending me. So of course when you hear this, you'll be shocked and very embarrassed. And suddenly Colette notices that Will is looking at the sky happily. And she asks him, "What exactly are you looking at?" And he tells her that the sky is very beautiful today. And she tells him that he's right, especially that they can see the desert tower from afar. And we know that this tower is powered by a very powerful magical power, which was done by the kings of magic. And we go to the past of the world in which Will lived. And we know that the world was under the control of a very powerful magician. And this magician was evil, and he used the magic of darkness. And all the people were living in fear, until 5 of the magicians arrived, and they were able to defeat the evil magician. And he was able to bring the light back to the world again. And they took the title of the legendary magicians after they saved the world. And we see Colette looking at the tower and telling him that the magician is looking at us right now. So he tells her that she's watching us right now. And then we go to a quick memory of Will's life when he was young. And he was sitting with a little girl named Elvie. And they had a book that talked about the stars, the sun, and the moon. And Elvie knew that they could see all these things if they became legendary magicians. And at that time, they could see all these things when they got to the top of the magic tower. So Will promises her to be strong and to be the strongest magician. But in the beginning and in the end, these are children's promises. But Elvie was a very talented magician to the point that she became the smallest legendary magician. And she was able to reach the top of the magic tower as Will promised when they were young. And we go back to the flashback, and we see here our hero Will shocked. And he's standing in front of Mr. Graham, because he entered a magic cave from the 7th level without his permission. And of course he's afraid that he'll die because he knows that Will is a tough guy and he doesn't know how to use magic. So Will always apologizes to him. But he asks him and tells him, "Will I get a reward for killing my monsters or not?" So here Graham tells him that you'll only get 2 points. And that's because you killed only 1 evil guard. And Graham asks him and tells him, "You're still determined to be a legendary magician." So Will tells him, "Is there a problem that I achieve my dream and be a strong magician?" So he tells him, in order to reach the legendary magic tower, you have to graduate from the academy and get a lot of points. And since you don't know how to use magic, this will make it very difficult for you. So Will tells him that he knows all of this. That's why I fight monsters to get back the points that I lose. And when Graham realizes that Will is depressed, He starts to change the subject and tells him to focus on graduating from the academy, and then we'll see your dream that you want to achieve. And he tells him, since you didn't know how to collect points in all the last exams, so you have to collect points quickly before the week ends so you don't graduate from the academy. So Will takes the book with him and keeps looking for monsters that give him a lot of points. So Graham starts to help him and tells him that the magic tower from level 6 has a monster that will give you a lot of points. So Will is very happy and hugs him because he always helps him and stands next to him. But the shock is that Cheyenne was standing outside and was listening to them, and he decided to go to the gate from level 6 to kill the monster before Will and lose the points. And we see that he reached the gate and he is very happy. And he is sure that he will pass this test. But the creature Kiki is with him is very nervous and scared. So Will starts to comfort him and tells him not to be afraid. I can deal with any monster here. And he asks Kiki to use her strong sense of smell to be able to determine the location of the monster. And now we see that Cheyenne and his friends are at the gate to kill the monster quickly. And he tells them that we have to get Will out of the academy because he is not good enough and he can't use the magic. But one of Cheyenne's friends tells him that it's not dangerous to be alone in a cell from level 6. So Cheyenne looks at him and he is very angry. And he tells him that you don't know that I am very strong, and I can defeat any monster here. And then he turns around to tell them his plan. But he is surprised that one of the two with him flew and got stuck in the wall from a strong blow. And suddenly Cheyenne sees the monster that did this and starts to be afraid of him and his friends. And suddenly Will hears a very loud scream. So he runs fast to know where this scream comes from. And very quickly he can reach the place of the monster. And he finds Cheyenne sitting here on the ground, scared and terrified. And he can't do anything with the monster that is there. But Will is surprised by this monster. And he is surprised that such a powerful monster is in a cave of level 6 and that it should be in a much higher level than this. And we see Cheyenne attacking the monster and trying to get rid of it. But his attacks are very weak. And the monster gets angry with Cheyenne and gets closer to him to get rid of him. At the same time, we see Will standing far away. And he says, I have to get in to help Cheyenne and save him, or let the monster get rid of him so that he can get his revenge. And every little bit he will get angry at him. But suddenly he remembers his memories with Elvie, and she gives him his glasses and tells him that he is the bravest and nicest person here in the academy. So Will decides to get in to save Cheyenne. And we see that the monster is still going to hit Cheyenne very hard. So Will gets in with his sword and stops the attack. At this time we see Edward getting to Grom quickly, and he is angry. And Grom knows that Cheyenne and his friends are in a cage of level 6. And Edward asks him to help them and look for them to get them out. So Grom starts to reassure him and tells him not to worry, because Will is there and he will be able to deal with the monster. And he uses his magic balloon to see everything that happens there in the magic gate. And we go back to Will and we see that he is a ghost. And he is able to block the attacks of the very strong monster. And he deals with it very well. And although he failed in using magic, but it is very clear that he is very strong in using the sword, and Will succeeds in hurting the monster's hand. So the monster gets angry at the end, and he increases his attack on him and hits him very hard. But Will is able to deal with his attack because of his high speed, and we see that the monster left the sword with him, and he keeps hitting Will with the stone and the ball. But Will blocks it all with the sword with him and runs to hit him, and Will really succeeds in hurting the monster in his shoulder. And we see that Cheyenne is shocked, and he can't believe that Will was able to deal with the monster. And he says that this is Will who asked us to curse him, because he can't use magic. And at that time, Gran starts explaining to Edward. And he says that Will has a very strong physical strength, and there is no magician who has this strength. And he says that he has a talent that he can solve any attack, just by seeing it once. And we go back to Will, and we see that the monster attacks him with the sword again. But Will avoids the attack very easily. And he gets confused in the air and immediately flies the monster's shield. And at that time the monster, after his shield is flying, is ready to use a magic attack from his mouth and attack Will. But Will immediately pulls the huge sword with him and blocks the strong magic attack of the monster. And honestly, Will is a very strong hit with the sword with him. He cuts the monster in half, and then he goes to reassure Cheyenne, who is very angry at the end, to the extent that he passes on his lips and hurts himself. And we see that Edward is of course angry at the end, because Will was the one who managed to kill the monster, and Cheyenne was acting like a coward, and he leaves Gran and walks while he is annoyed. And the next day we see that Will is at Gran, and he is shaking him, because Will didn't listen to him and acted out of his mind. But he doesn't care about Gran, and decides to give him the point that will save him, and leave him still in the academy. And then we go to a flashback from 5 years ago, when Will joined the Academy of Magic. And at that time, all the students of the academy were trying to bully him, because he is very weak and not good at magic. And they say that his friend Elfie is much stronger than him, and they say that she was the reason why he went to school with us. But in the end, he doesn't want to go to school with them because he is very weak. And all of them literally ignore him, and no one talks to him at all. And at that time, he goes with Mr. Gran to the head of the academy, whose name is Elfie. And she does a magical seduction, and she pulls out a magic hook and eats him. And then Will tries a lot of magical seductions, and she starts attacking him from all directions, and she sees his reaction, but Will manages to block all her attacks. And she keeps laughing, and she is very impressed with his strength. Even his teacher Graham doesn't believe that he has this strength, and then Anuf allows him to continue his studies in the academy after he passed his exam. And at that time Will says to him, "If I pass my exam in the academy, I will be able to climb the legendary tower and meet my friend Elfie." And she says to him, "Of course, teacher, with your determination and determination, you will be able to succeed and climb the legendary tower." And when they leave her and leave, at that time she is shocked at the end, that for the first time a student who doesn't know magic continues with them in the academy. And we go back to the flashback, and we see Will sitting in the class of teacher Graham, and he is explaining to them how to climb the legendary tower. And the first thing they should do is to submit it to the higher institution. And this higher institution will judge if you are a legendary magician and you deserve to climb the tower or not. And to climb the tower, you have to do two things, and that is to invent a new magic, or to collect 7,500 points during your study. And he tells them that there are very few people who can invent a new magic, and everyone always focuses on collecting 7,500 points because they are the easiest way to climb the tower. But in the end, he annoys them and tells them not to think that these 7,500 points are very easy, and you have to put a lot of effort in the end. And after the class is over, we see Will walking with his classmates, and she tells him that you have no solution except to collect 7,500 points, because of course it is impossible for you to be able to invent a new magic, since you are not a magician. So he tells her to shut up and to finish the tests of this academy. But when they think of teacher Edward, they know that he is a very difficult teacher, and his tests are always complicated. And while they are on their way, they hear Cheyenne's friends talking about the greatness of Cheyenne, and they think that he is the one who defeated the monster that was present in the gate that was from the 6th level. And they say that we were amazed when we first saw the monster, but as soon as we went up, we found the monster cut in half in front of the leader Cheyenne. But of course Cheyenne was embarrassed, and he knew that the one who defeated the monster was Will. And as soon as he finds Will walking in front of him, he gets angry and runs at him, and grabs his clothes and tells him, "Who do you think you are exactly?" And he tells him not to forget that you are a magician and don't waste your power. And of course, everyone who is present doesn't understand why he is fighting with him. But after that, he leaves him and goes. And after that, we see that teacher Edward arrived at the head of the academy enough, and he tells her that we have to kick Will out of the academy. So she tells him that you are the one who is so annoyed with him, and you still think that we have to kick him out now? And she tells him that you forgot that this is my last year in the academy. So he tells her that our academy needs a magician, not a warrior. And after that, Anuf makes a plan and brings Will's personal secret. And she knows that during the last 6 years, all his grades were good and that he is a hard-working student. And she tells him that if he continues like this, he will be able to climb the legendary tower. And as the head of the academy here, I have to let all the students decide their own fate. But Edward gets angry and tells her, "How are you going to let someone who doesn't use magic climb the legendary tower of the strongest magician?" So she answers him and tells him that you are right. This is a big problem. That's why I will let you test him. And she tells him to do the test that you want. And if he fails in your test, I am ready to kick him out of the academy. So he tells her that you are sure of your decision. And of course, he is very happy that Will is in his hands, and no one will have mercy on him now. And she also tells him that I will let you do any test that you want, and I won't interfere with it at all. And at that time, Edward is happy. But the head of the academy, Anuf, is laughing like crazy. And as you know that Will be able to pass his test. And we go back to Will after that. And we see that Cold is always helping him with her magic to open the safe for him and take his stuff in it. And of course, because he can't use magic at all. And of course, she asks him why he is taking his stuff inside his safe. So he tells her that I am not allowed to take my stuff inside the academy. And after that, they both remember in the library. And it is clear that Will is a very hard-working student, to the point that Cold is shocked by the speed of his writing and a lot of information that he knows. And Will starts telling Cold about a group of mages who were very strong fighters and fought the evil for a long time and were able to defeat it, even though those mages didn't have any magical power. And suddenly, while she is talking to him, she thinks that Will has a white hair and tells him to let her take it off. And almost like that, Cold's daughter is mentally challenged. But Will, of course, refuses and is very embarrassed. So she tells him that this white hair appeared because you are exhausting yourself in the exam very much. And suddenly Edward comes to them and tells Will that I want you to come with me to the compensation room by yourself. And while they are on their way to the compensation room, Will asks Edward and tells him, "Why did you bring me alone?" So Edward answers him and tells him that I will give you some additional lessons so that you know that I am good and I like to help you. And Will doesn't know that Edward has a very big secret. And suddenly Edward uses his magic stick and uses a spell around Will and tells him that your mission now is to leave me one injury. And he tells him that if you fail to do any injury, then you will be expelled from the academy. And he starts talking to him with a very strong spell and tells him that a person like you who doesn't use magic can't be with us. And of course, Will is shocked and doesn't believe him and doesn't know how to act. And suddenly the head of the academy calls Graham and says that I'm sorry that I brought you all this distance, but I want to show you something. And she makes a cover behind her and opens a small screen like this so that Graham can see the fight between Edward and Will. So of course he is shocked and tells him, "Why did you do that?" So you tell him that you always supervise Will, and this was very suspicious for Edward. So you let him test himself. Now we see Edward attacking Will with his magic spell, and everything Will does is that he runs away from it. And of course Graham watches and tells him, "Why did you choose Edward specifically to test him?" And he tells her that this test is very harsh on Will. And we go back to Will, who says that Edward uses a spell on him from a low level, and yet this spell is very strong. And then Will uses his great speed and runs to Edward to give him a strong leg. But Edward uses his magic spell to block Will's attack and tells him that if he thinks that he can break his spell, he will be a great loser. And then Will flies and lands on the ground. And Will thinks and asks him how to deal with him so that he can only injure him. And then Edward tells Will that he only used 2 spells against him, and those 2 spells are not strong. But it's obvious that he is very weak and can't deal with them. But Edward changes his mind and makes a lot of excuses around Will and gets ready to attack him. And he keeps attacking Will with very strong blows. And we see Will flying in the air from the power of the blows he gets. And Edward is like a worker making a musical tune. And he doesn't care about anything at all. And then Will is very upset and says that he can't defeat him because he is a first-class magician. And he hopes that if Safe was with him, he would at least be able to do something with him. And we go back to all this that the worker thinks. And she says that Edward wants Will to do something. And his time is now holding a stick and beating him. And suddenly she realizes that Kiki is in a very serious injury. So she starts to feel that something bad might have happened to Will. And then we see Edward getting closer to Will. And he fell on the ground and almost couldn't move. And he tells him, as you can see, that magic is the most important thing in the world here, and it's impossible without any magical power to defeat me. And he tells him that the safe that is with you doesn't compare at all to the magical power we have. And he continues to bully him and step on him with his foot. But Will gets angry and grabs his foot and pushes him away. So Edward tells him that it's the reason that makes you so excited, and you have hope that you can defeat me. So Will tells him the reason is simply that I want to be with the person I love. And of course he means Elfie. So Edward tells him that your words are very silly. But Will tells him that no matter how silly my words were to you, but I broke Elfie's promise when I was young, to bring us to the legendary tower. And all of a sudden we find a teacher calling Will, and she gives him his safe after she got it from the safe. So Will of course grabs the safe and is very happy and thanks her. So she tells him to get rid of this Edward teacher and introduce him to his position. And then Edward tells him to leave the safe that is with you and beats him with a hammer. But Will is always able to block this hammer very easily. And when Will sees the power of the darkness that is coming out around Edward, he is very scared. But he says that this fear won't help him achieve his dream. And all of a sudden Edward uses this mini amulets and attacks him with one. But Will is able to fly in the air and break all of these amulets with the safe that he has. And he remembers a time when one of the Dark Leaders was able to defeat the Dark Lord, even though all of his army was killed and he had no magic at all. And then we see Will flying in the air, and he tried a new speed on Edward's barrier. And he was able to break it easily. And then he attacks Edward with his sword, but he stops at the last moment. And here Edward is shocked that Will was able to hurt him in his face. And then Edward gets up, leaves him and walks while he is in pain. And then Will's safe comes, who is literally in pain and tired of fighting. And we go back to the academician Anuf, who is happy that Will was able to win Edward's challenge. And she says that Will has a very big future, and he will be able to reach the legendary tower one day. And we continue our story, and we see Will running in the city. And he is distributing the newspapers, and he is very happy. And while he is running, all the newspapers are falling down. But while they are falling, he notices a news in the newspapers, which is that Elfie has invented a new magic. But at the same time, there is a request from Elfie in the newspaper. And then we see Will reaching his residence. And he calls his friend Rust. And he says that he is ready for my equipment and all the magic tools that I use. And he says that there is something, or what? And he says that Elfie offers the request because there is a certain tool that she needs. And that's why I decided to help her and found this tool for her. And Rust asks him and says that what will you do with the lectures and lessons you gave her? And he says that all the lectures don't have any 30 minutes. And he says that I will spend all my time in the magic cave. And he says that Elfie needs a monster called the Ice Wanderer. And he says that this monster is in a cave in the 4th level, and he decides to take magic tools from Rust because he will need them. And after that, Will reaches the cave, which is in the 4th level, and he is ready to look for the Ice Wanderer. And then he remembers that Will is the most powerful witch in the world, and she used to tell them that anyone who enters any cave must try to discover it, and any information they discover, they must turn it into power to be able to help them later. And of course, Will thinks that he is the first one to reach the cave, which is in the 4th level, to hunt the Ice Wanderer. But he is shocked that there are a lot of wizards with him, and they hunt the Ice Wanderer that he wants. And he takes Will's attention from Cheyenne, who is killing the monsters. And his friends, as usual, don't stop beating him up. And Cheyenne remembers the last time he was in the cave, when Will helped him, and because he is stressed and angry, his magic power spreads all over the place. So Will keeps leaving Cheyenne and saying that every time he sees her, he always fights with her. And while he is on his way, he finds a monster that attacked his daughter. So the prince wears his glasses and uses his magic to kill the monster very easily. And the girl doesn't believe that Will can kill them so easily. And after that, Will reassures her and starts to introduce her to himself. And in return, she thanks him for saving her. And she starts to introduce herself, and her name is Ursi. And while they are walking together, she tells him that he is the only student that can't use magic. So Will is embarrassed by her question and asks her to respect him a little, when she knows that he can't use magic. And she doesn't want him to get upset like the other students. So she tells him that you can't get upset after you saved my life from death. And she tells him that I don't care if you can use magic or not. The most important thing I care about is that the person is smart. Will is a little happy that she finally decided to respect him. And then he asks her what she is doing in the cave. She tells him that she is looking for the monster's essence. to help the witch Elfie and save the world. And Will starts to think about Ursi's words, and he knows that her words are true, and that the sky that they see is not real, and that it is a magic barrier made by the strongest wizard. And he says that there is a legend that says that as soon as this magic barrier disappears, a very big disaster will happen, and that darkness will cover the whole world. That's why all the wizards try to help the witch Elfie, because this is the only way they can help her, to protect the world. And suddenly Ursi calls him and tells him, "What are you so happy about?" And she tells him that you won't believe me when I tell you that I met the witch Elfie before. And she tells him that when I met her, I was very happy, and also amazed by her beauty and ready to sacrifice my life to help her in anything. And she tells him that although I have been in this magic gate for a long time, but I didn't find any ice wizard that I can kill and take his essence. And she thinks that she arrived late. That's why she didn't find any ice wizard. But she realizes that Will is not focused on her at all, and that he is just checking the ground. So she tells him, "What are you doing exactly?" And he tells her that any ice wizard always leaves a mark on him when he leaves his place. And he tells her that their mark is very small. But for the mark that I see, it is bigger than the normal size. And that means that there is a huge ice wizard. And he is in a place that we don't know his location. So she tells him that, "How did you know all this information? And you don't know how to use magic at all." So he tells her that this information doesn't need to know how to use magic, and that my previous experiences made me know important information like this. And as soon as Will wears his glasses, he is surprised by a huge monster that appears from above them, and this monster attacks them. But Will immediately removes Ursa and runs away quickly to avoid his attack. And of course, when Ursa sees this monster and he is looking at it, she is afraid and terrified at the end. And we know that this monster is called the Ice Wizard, and this is the evolved form of the Ice Wizard. And as soon as this monster hits the ground with his foot, and a very strong steam comes out that makes them not see anything, and Will immediately attacks with an ice beam. But Will immediately runs away and goes back and avoids his attack again. And then Will tells Ursa, "Sit down, because I don't know how to deal with this monster because of you." So she tells him to get away from this monster quickly, because it doesn't get affected by physical attacks. And she tells him that the only way to defeat this Rex monster is magic. And she tells him that this Rex monster is equipped to kill the bodies, because it freezes anyone who gets close to it. But Will shocks her and tells her that there is no problem at all, because I faced this monster before, and I was able to defeat a large number of it. And as soon as Will gets ready and goes out to attack him, but the monster hits him with the ice beam, so Will can jump and avoid his attack. So the monster takes the opportunity and attacks Will while he is flying, but Will is also able to avoid it. And as soon as he lands on the ground, he takes out the magic tools that he took from his friend Rust and throws them at the monster. And as soon as he finds it, he turns around the monster's entire body. And we know that the weak point of the monster is fire and explosions. And the monster tries to get rid of himself and attack Will. But Will immediately performs the skills of his friend Rust. And there are a lot of explosions, and he is able to hit the monster and break him. And Will is happy with the magic tools that he took from Rust and says that he expected that they would help him a lot. And of course Iris is watching Will and is surprised that he has such a great power and was able to defeat this monster in seconds, and says that all the rumors that I heard about will have nothing to do with the truth, and says that he will write an F in my report that I will submit. But Will tells her that the essence of this Rex monster will be enough for both of us. And then we see Iris walking alone in the magic tower, and immediately breaks her hair and shows anger, and says that Will does not have magic, but he has a very strong experience and intelligence that makes him able to defeat any monster. And he can also adapt to any situation he is in. And although all these qualities will not benefit him in any way to be a magician, but it will make him a talented and very strong fighter. And she opens the door in front of her, and as soon as she enters, she meets 4 of the Magic Kings, and one of them is the magician Elvie. And as soon as she enters, she apologizes to them that she interrupted their conversation, and tells one of the magicians that there is no disturbance or anything, and that we were discussing the magic barrier and it was a very boring topic. And one of the Magic Kings says that the wolves are ready at any moment to attack us, just by disappearing or destroying the magic barrier. And he is upset that they do not know how to gather enough people to help them. So one of the Magic Kings tells him that we need talented warriors to help us as soon as this barrier disappears. And she says that the legend cannot be fulfilled until we find very strong warriors to help us. And when they ask Ursa about her report and if she found someone suitable, she tells them that through a recent search, she found only one applicant. But he is the one who has these qualities, and he can help you. And of course, she pointed it out to our hero Will. And she tells them that although he does not have any magical power, but he has the qualifications and abilities to be the new member of the Magic Tower. But 3 of the Magic Kings refuse her offer. And they say that it is not possible for someone who does not have any magical power to be present with us in the Magic Tower, to the extent that someone says that I do not want to lose someone who does not have any talent. But the King Zuri responds to her and tells her that I am interested in him, and I have no problem using any person who is useful to me, even if he is one of the giants. But the Wizard Wise Man tells them that there is no need to fight, because the magic round will start soon, and they can decide who is suitable after the end of the round. And if Will was really strong as Ursa told us, then he will be the one who will be able to win the round. And he really agrees with his suggestion. And then everyone disappears and goes back to his place again. And then Ursa tells Elvie that Will is really an interesting person, as you told me exactly. And then the wizard Elvie brings out the essence that Will gave her and tells her that Will succeed and will be able to reach me. And then we go back to the Wizardry Academy. And we know that all the students must collect 12,000 points to get out of the legendary Magic Tower. And then we see a group of students, including Cheyenne, present in an exam inside the academy, and they are fighting against aliens. And of course, to collect a lot of points, they deserve to be the Magic Kings after that. And then we see Cheyenne doing a fire compensation, and he always destroys the machine that challenges him. And then we see the student Cool doing a lot of compensations, and she pulls all the pieces that were destroyed by the machine that destroyed Cheyenne. And she always points it towards the machine that she is fighting, and she can always destroy it. And they succeed in the exam, and Cheyenne collects 9,300 points. And the student Cooled collects 7,300 points. And we also see Will in this exam, and he is challenging one of the giant machines. And since he does not know how to use magic, he is suffering and he is challenging him. And we see all the students trying to destroy him. And the idiot Will says he wants to destroy this machine with his own hands, without having any magic. And indeed, the machine always gives Will a very strong punch and he flies. And of course, Will, as usual, is the laughingstock of the whole academy. And then we see 2 of the strongest students who have the magic of thunder and wind, and they can easily destroy all the giant machines that challenge them. And the student who has the magic of thunder is called Lihana, and she collects 10,000 points. And the student who has the magic of wind is called Vingle, and he also collects 10,000 points like her. And then a student named Julius arrives, and he has the power of the magic of ice. And indeed, he can make ice cubes and literally freezes the whole place. And he can get rid of a very large number of machines. And the student Julius also collects 10,000 points. And we see the student Lihana talking to the student Wingle. And she says clearly that you and Julius have not lost anything of your magical skills. And then the student Julius arrives and tells Lihana and Wingle that I will participate in the magic competition that will be held this year, and I will be able to defeat you very easily. And he takes an ice flower in his hand and throws it at them as a kind of mockery. But Wingle immediately makes a wind buffering, and he is able to destroy it. And then Lihana uses a thunder buffering and destroys it completely. And Wingle says to him, "Let's see who of us will win in the competition." And of course, the student is watching these 3. And he knows that they are the 3 strongest in the academy. And he says that they are the ones who will be able to ascend to the legendary tower, especially that they are collecting 10,000 points. And there are only 2,000 points left. And Wingle is like the watermelon and very sad, especially that his points are very low, and he only collected 5,000 points. And he decides not to participate in the competition because he knows that he will not succeed in it at all. And then Julius passes by Wingle, and he continues to insult him and mock him a little before he leaves. And Julius is also with 2 of his colleagues, and they are patting him and telling him that we are sure that you will succeed in this test very easily. And then we see Wingle sitting with Cold, and he is very sad when he knows that he will not participate in the Magic Festival. And he says that if you only depend on memorization, You will not be able to collect any points at all in the academy, and you will be eliminated soon. And he says to her, "You are right." And when he looks at the rest of the students, he finds them all excited because they all want to participate in the Magic Festival. And we know that the Regarden Academy holds this Magic Festival once every 2 years. And all the students compete in it. And the one who can win ascends to the Magic Tower. And there will be scouts from other academies. And also all the Magic Kings will be present at this festival. And here Cold starts to introduce Will to the Magic Kings. And she tells him that there are 4 kings. And the first one is the Lord of Lightning, and then the Queen of Thorns, and then the Emperor of Gold, and the last one is the Prince of Ice. But Will responds to her and tells her that if I participate in this competition, it will be an ordinary festival since I do not know how to use magic. And he says to her, I remember the last time I was in the 2nd year, and I participated in it. And at that time, everyone in the festival was making fun of me. And when they look out of the window, they find all the students of the academy exhibiting their magical abilities, ready to participate in the Magic Festival. And Cold continues to try to convince Will to participate in the Magic Festival, but it is clear that his mind is dry at the end. And suddenly Cold discovers that there is a secret door in front of them, but it has a magical charm that hides its place. So she uses Will's cat, which can cancel the desire to disappear, and really find the secret door in front of them. And when they go down, they find a large number of students, betting on the student who will be able to win the Magic Festival. And of course, if your bet is right, you will earn a lot of money. And of course, the 3 most likely to be bet on are Julius, Liana, and Wingle. And the shock here is when they find the lions in the secret room. So he tells them, what are you doing here? And he says he's still mad at them. But Cold always goes to him and tells him, not all when you see us, you want to fight with us. And of course, as usual, the lion's friends make fun of him and say that the lion is the one who will win this competition. And we are here to bet on him. And then the lion decides to leave them and go, and tells them that we are the ones who will win in the Magic Festival, and tells them that I know that Julius, Liana, and Wingle brought me much higher points, just because they attend their lectures and I don't. And after Will finishes his class, he tells Cold that he's going to Gina's bar to help her with her work. And we know that during this period, all the students have finished their work and are on vacation. And they like to hang out and celebrate a little. And Will is the one who helps Gina in her bar and offers the food and drinks to the customers. And of course, the customers love Will a lot because he's the only one who treats them well. And they tell him that he won't participate in the Magic Festival. And Will tells them that he doesn't have any magic power, and if he participates in it, he will lose. And Rust is there with him in the bar and helps him because Will asked him to come with him today, because he has a lot of work. And then Rust talks to Will and tells him that he's happy with his work here, and that Gina's salary is enough for him, because the academy is very expensive. And he tells him that he knows that the salary is very low, but he loves the shoes, because they treat me well, and no one has ever bullied me before. And then Julius and his friends arrive in the bar where Will is, and he's very upset because this bar is very dirty. All the clean bars are closed, and this is the only one that works. And Julius continues to bully all the shoes in the bar, and he also takes into account that Will works in it. So one of the shoes gets upset with Julius's words because he's trying to bully them, but his friend calms him down and tells him that he's not like Julius. And then Julius continues to bully them and tells them that they are beings coming from another world to our world, and you don't deserve to live with us because you are very weak. And we know that the world of the shoes was destroyed by one of the kings of magic. That's why they all emigrated to this world, to live in it. But of course they don't have any magical power. And that's what made a very big layer between the magic and the shoes. And then when they sit on a table, and Rust brings them food, and they continue to destroy the food, and they also continue to swear at all the shoes that are in the bar, until Will literally gets upset and goes to stand in front of them and tells them that he wants them to apologize to everyone in the bar right now. But Julius gets very upset and throws a plate of food at Will, and his friends get angry, and they also get up to beat Will. But Will grabs them both and throws them on the floor and literally beats them both. And then Julius, when he finds his friends getting beat up, gets very angry and tells him that it's the first time he sees someone challenging him, and literally uses his leather magic and literally freezes the whole bar, and we see Will running away from Julius's attacks. But Julius manages to convince his neighbor that he is holding Will and supporting him and sticking him to the wall, and then he gets closer to him and makes an ice flower on his chest and gets ready to hurt him. But at the last minute, Julius goes back to his decision and asks Will to participate in the magic festival and tells him that he wants to defeat him in front of the whole academy. So Will agrees to his request and tells him that he will participate in the competition, but if he loses, he wants him to apologize to everyone in the bar. And it's obvious that Will put Julius in his mind and decided to participate in the competition because of the shoes. So Will succeed in the magic festival and defeat Julius. We will know the answer in the next parts. So if you are an enthusiastic hero like me, don't forget to support us by liking and subscribing. And see you again in a new story.